We've been introduced to the sage Dasura. Dasura lives on top of a tree, so magnificent that it straddles the space between earth and heaven. And he wanted to get away from the world. Dasura rejected the world as toxic. He still managed to have a son, and when the son was 12, his mother left him in Dasura's care for instruction. And now we're going to get Dasura's instruction to his son. Vasishta continued, "During this period I was myself going over that very tree and heard the sage's instructions to his son." So I think the assumption here that the sage Vasishta is actually flying through the sky and happened to overhear this teaching. Dasura said, "I shall illustrate what I wish to say concerning this world with a story." So now we've got a story within a story. "There lives a mighty king named Khottha, who is capable of conquering the 3 worlds. The deities presiding over the worlds faithfully honour his commands. No one can even catalogue his innumerable deeds, which were productive of both happiness and unhappiness. His valour could not be challenged by anyone using any weapon whatsoever, or even by fire, any more than one can hit space with a fist. Even Indra, Vishnu and Shiva could not equal him in his enterprises." So that's quite a powerful triumvirate of gods that this king Khottha is being compared with. "This king had 3 bodies which had completely engulfed the worlds, and they were respectively the best, the middling and the least. This king arose in space and got established in space. There in space the king built a city with 14 roads and 3 sectors. In it were pleasure gardens, beautiful mountain peaks for sports, and 7 lakes with pearls and creepers in them. In it there were 2 lights which were hot and cold, and whose light never diminished." In these descriptions of worlds and universes and cosmic bodies being created, there's an easy identification of the body with the universe. This has been referred to before as macrocosm-macrocosm, parallelism. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's really this sense of identity of the cosmos with the body, the human body. So for example, the 2 lights could be the sun and the moon, or they could be the 2 eyes. In the city the king created several types of beings. Some were placed above, others in the middle, and yet others below. This could be 3 aspects of the body and the mind, or it could be the 3 worlds, which are the worlds of the humans and the celestials and the subtle regions in between. Some of this will be explained in the next chapter. Of them, some were long-lived and others short-lived. They were covered with black hair. They had 9 gates. They were well ventilated. They had 5 lamps, 3 pillars, and white supporting wooden poles. They were soft with clay plastering. All this was created by the maya or illusory power of the king. Here the king besports himself with all the ghosts and goblins, which are afraid of inquiry or investigation, that have been created to protect the mansions, the different bodies. So ghosts and goblins here are more or less being defined as beings who don't want to look too closely at things. They don't want to look into the nature of themselves or the world. When he thinks of moving, he thinks of a future city and contemplates migrating to it. Surrounded by the ghosts, he runs fast to the new abode after leaving the previous one, and occupies the new city built in the fashion of a magic creation. in that again when he contemplates destruction, he destroys himself. Sometimes he wails, "What shall I do? I am ignorant, I am miserable." Sometimes he is happy, at others pitiable. Thus he lives and conquers, goes, talks, flourishes, shines, and does not shine. My son, thus this king is tossed in this ocean of world appearance. So this king who's more than a match for Indra, Vishnu and Shiva is tossed around in the ocean of world appearances. Dasura continued, "Thus has been illustrated the creation of the universe and of man. Khottha, who arose in the great void, is none but a notion or an intention. This notion arises in the great void of its own accord and dissolves in the great void of its own accord too. The entire universe and whatever there is in it is the creation of this notion or intention and not else. In fact, even the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, are the limbs of that notion. That intention alone is responsible for the creation of the 3 worlds, the 14 regions and the 7 oceans. That the city built by the king is nothing but the living entity with its different organs and their characteristics. Of the different kinds of beings thus created, some, the gods, are in a higher region and the others are in lower realms. Having built this imaginary city, the king placed it under the protecting care of ghosts. These ghosts are the ahamkara, the ego principle. These are the tendencies which give rise to the notion of a self, an individual self. So that's why, and that's the opposite of self-inquiry. The king thenceforth sports in this world, in this body. In a moment he sees the world in the waking state, and after some time he abruptly shifts his attention to the world within, which he enjoys in his dreams. He moves from one city to another, from one body to another, from one realm to another. And this is what we're all doing all the time. We're all moving from between sleep and wakefulness. In our sleep we get caught up in our dreams. In wakefulness we get caught up in our notions of self and a world out there. And we're flitting around all the time. After many such peregrinations he develops wisdom, getting disillusioned with these worlds and their pleasures, and reaches the end of his wandering by the cessation of all notions. So occasionally, at some point, eventually, we hit the light switch and the nature of things is revealed. In one moment he seems to enjoy wisdom, on the very next moment he's caught up in pleasure seeking, and in an instant his understanding gets perverted, just in the case of a little child. These notions are either like dense darkness and give rise to ignorance and births in the lower orders of creation, or pure and transparent and give rise to wisdom, drawing one close to the truth, or impure and give rise to worldliness. When all such notions cease, then there is liberation. Even if one engages oneself in every other sort of spiritual endeavour, and even if one has the gods themselves as one's teachers, and even if one were in heaven or any other region, liberation is not had except through the cessation of all notions. The real, the unreal, and the admixture of these two are all but notions and not else, and notions themselves are neither real nor unreal. What then shall we call real in this universe? Hence, my son, give up these notions, thoughts and intentions. When they cease, the mind naturally turns to what is truly beyond the mind, the infinite consciousness. So we're adrift on a notion of notions, and that's what we need to examine. All the notions, all the assumptions that we make concerning who we are and where we are.